Okay, let's cut to the chase. You know why you came to this YouTube channel, and I know why you came to this YouTube channel, and it's not just because I'm super hot. For those of you who don't know, I am the co-creator of Nettlebrook and the sole creator of the web series Daisy Brown. So back in, what was it? 2017? Yeah. 4 years ago! In 2017, I made Daisy Brown, and it's been 4 years now, and I have yet to ever answer any of the questions that people had about it, or address that I made it at all. And the reason for that is plain and simple because it's kind of scary for me. In case you didn't notice, Daisy Brown is clearly a very emotional story, and it came from very personal, very dark, very sensitive parts of my life and my inner psyche. And over the course of making it, a bunch of really bad things happened in my life. Honestly, that's why I kind of tried to avoid thinking back on Daisy Brown, because it brings up a lot of emotions that I kind of don't want to think about. We're working on the camera quality, guys. We're working on the setup. We're working on the sound, I swear we are. It's only uphill from here. So for the past 4 years, as people have been like earnestly tweeting questions about Daisy Brown and stuff at me, I've just been hidden away in the bad cave, trying to avoid thinking about it at all. And no more! I am throwing away the curtain. I am stopping the buck here. I'm finally answering your questions on how and why I made Daisy Brown. Before we really dive into that though, I'm going to start off with some housekeeping. Just a couple quick like questions before we get into the real meat of this video. The first question is Nettlebrook cancelled? Nettlebrook is not cancelled. Trust me and Lella are rubbing our individual brain cells together, coming up with a plan for the future. The reason why it's been so long without an update is that the entire cast lives in the United States, and I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's been going on here lately, but it's a mess. More specifically, COVID cases are on the rise here, and it's just not safe for the cast to get up and film together. The second question is, who is Big Alan? I've been getting this one a lot. Big Alan was a friend that I met in college who, after I told him about the project, was crazy enough to want to join. He was a huge help to specifically the ending of Daisy Brown when things got too big for me to do it by myself. I'm not going to be saying his name because I want to respect his privacy and respect him as a human being, and so I wish for you all to respect his privacy as well. Now on to the good stuff. I'm going to start off by killing 2 questions with 1 stone. And those questions are, did you make up the story as you went, or did you come up with the whole thing beforehand? And how did you actually get started making Daisy Brown? I'm going to be answering this question with an unnecessarily long anecdote. Rewind to me at age like 17, I was a senior in high school, I think. This was pre-therapy, Julia, so I had a lot of really frustrating, like painful emotions that I like wasn't dealing with. So I came up with the idea for a story about a girl trapped in the house with a monster that her dad made. And I did come up with the entire story before filming even started. And at the time I was really into Allen tutorials, obviously, Everyman Hybrid and Marble Hornets, and I remember as I was thinking of this story, like this little part of my brain was like, what if I did something like that, you know? Like what if I was able to tell this story in video form with an audience where people can like interact and see it, you know? And then the rest of my brain was like, shut up bitch, that's never gonna happen, it's never gonna work, just give up right now. And so I listened to that part, but I could never get the story out of my head. Over the years, I just like kept thinking about it and kept like developing on it and kept thinking about the girl and the monster and like what it would look like and stuff. Fast forward to when I was 19, I was dating this person. And I was over at their house and I just, out of the blue, was like, can I tell you this story that I like thought up? This was the first time I had told anyone about this. I just spilled everything to them. Like the plot, what it all meant, what it symbolized, like what it meant to me, like who all the characters were, how the monsters would look. I was just like going on and on and on. And I remember it literally got to the point where I was like, I got on the ground to act something out of like how a monster would move or something. And they stopped me and they were like, you know this is gonna be a really hard thing to do, right? And I was like, well, yeah, I know that. I haven't even decided if I want to do it yet. And I'm paraphrasing here, obviously, I don't remember exactly what they said, but it was something along the lines of, I'm just being honest, if you do this and you put this out online, people are going to laugh at you. And like this was the first person who I had ever told the story to. And this person who like I thought I was in love with just told me that if I do it, people are gonna laugh at me. And literally the next day, The day after they told me this, I went home and started building Alan. I'm not joking. So if you want to know what truly motivates me as a creator, it's spite. Next question. Where did the idea for the captions come from? My favorite thing about the story of Daisy Brown is the lore, like the stuff that you don't see because Daisy is just like one perspective. I'm obsessed with perspective and how other people's point of view will completely change the story. Like I love reading books where you meet a bunch of characters and you get to like hear all of their backstory and all of their points of view, but I also knew that that would be really hard to express through Daisy Brown because she is just one person and it doesn't make sense for her to like know all of her dad's baggage and stuff. And so I remember I didn't like the automated captions in general, and so I was like, I'm gonna wrestle in there and like switch them up. And that's when I got the idea of like, what if I could give everyone's tragic anime backstory through the captions? And then I just went with it. I just did it. Is there going to be more videos? Is there going to be a part 2 or a continuation? The short answer is no. I'm really happy with how the story ended. I put a lot of thought and effort into it. I told the story that I wanted to tell, and I'm satisfied with it. I personally have no reason to make more. So no, like there's no plan in the near future or any time to make more Daisy Brown videos. That comes with the caveat of I'm not gonna say never, because like who knows if in 30 years I'm just gonna wake up and suddenly like have the idea for like what, like I have to continue the story, I have to tell what happens to Daisy next. In the meantime, there's not going to be a Daisy Brown 2. However, if there ever is a Daisy Brown 2, I'm just gonna call it Daisy Brown 2. I'm not giving it a better title than that. What's something that I'm disappointed the fans missed? Oh my gosh, it happened on Twitter, and it was this little piece of world building that I was like so proud of. Daisy is talking about like how she's educated and how her dad taught her about like history and stuff. And she asks like, who's your favorite historical figure? Mine is Christopher Columbus. And obviously the comments are just like, why is Christopher Columbus your favorite? And she reveals that her dad taught her a very narrow view of history, to the point where she mentions that the history book that she learned from literally had like pages ripped out of it. When people tried to tell her like, you know, you can Google things and find out even more about these people. And then she like found out in real time that he had like committed genocide, and it was this like huge, like very upsetting shock for her. I really loved that moment so much, and I wish that more people had like noticed it or picked up on it, even though I know that not everyone was in on the Twitter thing, because I felt like, oh, it's just like such a perfect representation of how her dad just wasn't telling her the truth, like an incomplete truth, literally ripping pages out of a history book, so she never had the chance to learn it. Ah! I love that. What's something that the fans noticed that I'm surprised that they noticed? Well, like I mentioned earlier, around the time of filming Daisy Brown, a lot of really challenging things started happening in my life. One of them being that my grandfather was diagnosed with cancer. And that's especially towards the second half of the series where a lot of the like pain came from. And around this time, one of my friends named Ava got me a little present. It was one of those little grow your own plants, a little pot that would grow a daisy. And that's what appeared in the video, the quiet video. And in the description of that video, I hid the phrase, "Thank you, Ava," because it was just like a little nod to her for like being there for me during a really hard time in my life. And no one else was supposed to notice it besides her, and everyone did. Immediately, everyone was like, who's Ava? We haven't met this character yet. Is there another monster named Ava? It was a disaster. Like, I was shocked at how easily that was noticed. But you know the one person who didn't notice it? Ava! She never noticed it! I told her this like literally a week ago, and she's like, oh, okay. Bitch, it was meant for you! Anyway, if you want to check out Ava, she does have a YouTube channel, which I have showed up on at one point. I'm going to once again try to answer 2 questions with 1 answer by going over what kept you motivated during the creation process and what advice do I have for young creators. As far as advice for young creators, there's a lot of just standard advice that I feel like you've heard before, like challenge yourself, don't let criticism get to you, be willing to revise and do better, blah 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 blah. And all of this is good advice. I'm not trying to discount it. I mean, the reason you've heard it so many times is because it's right, it works. But my personal piece of advice, my hot take that I feel like a lot of people are not going to like, know why you're making your art. Like, understand your motivation for it. And by that I mean, are you getting into YouTube because it's fun, just for fun, you want to express yourself and you want to tell a story? If that's so, good! Go for it, that's fantastic. On the other hand, and I like really need you to be honest with yourself here, if your motivation for getting into art, specifically horror art, is becoming a viral sensation and getting like a million views and a million subscribers and making a lot of money, don't do it. Don't start. And I'm not trying to sound like an insane person by discouraging young creators from creating art. I'm just letting you know that if you go into making art with numbers as your main motivation and as like the main thing driving you forward, you're gonna drive yourself insane. And I'm like not even exaggerating when I say that. Because when you upload your first YouTube video, it's gonna have 0 views for like a while. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with the possibility of never making money or never making a million subscribers. I'm going to elaborate on this point with another obnoxiously long anecdote. So to set the scene, me, my college dorm room. I had filmed a Daisy Brown video. I had edited it. I had processed it to YouTube, and I was currently typing the captions. And I remember that I just like stopped and reread what I had written, and I just broke down crying, like just sobbing. Tears on the keyboard, like very dramatic, very metaphorical, because I was just so frustrated and so embarrassed. I thought that what I had written was like garbage and it was driving me insane, and I just wanted to quit so bad. All I wanted to do was like delete the channel, delete all the videos, slam my laptop shut, and just never ever ever think about it again, because it was just too much. And when I wanted to quit this bad, do you know what kept me going? I can tell you this, it wasn't the money and it wasn't the number of subscribers I had, okay? The thing that kept me from quitting was the fact that I loved the story so much. I had spent years coming up with it. It was so personal to me that quitting it felt impossible. For me to quit partway through would be like abandoning my daughter. I was doing it for Daisy. And so my advice to young creators for staying motivated and for your intentions getting into the art scene is get into it because you're so passionate that you can't not get into it. You have to find a personal reason why you want to make your art. You have to find a reason not to quit, because there's gonna be a time where it's gonna get hard and you're gonna want to give up. What's gonna stop you? You have to prepare for that. Tell a story that you love so much that quitting is impossible. Next question, what happened to Daisy's dad? Ooh, now we're getting into it. I intentionally left the fate of Daisy's dad very vague because I wanted it to, be ambiguous. A lot of details in the story are ambiguous, but if you want to know the canon version of what happened to him, the true answer that I feel like is going to annoy a lot of people is that there are 2 answers. As far as I'm concerned, when I was writing, there are 2 canonical answers to what happened to Daisy's dad, and it's just up to you to decide which version you want to be your truth. In the first ending, Daisy's dad died. He was killed by a creature of his own creation in the basement, right where Daisy lived, and when she went into the basement, she passed over his remains without even realizing it. This is what I would consider to be the sad ending, and I think it's more so sad than like gruesome, because when we hear her dad's tapes, it seems like he's kind of reaching the points of epiphany, where even though he's been like an abusive monster and he's hurt Daisy a lot, he's like getting to the point of understanding that he was in the wrong and wanting to make right by her. But he's never going to be able to make right by her because his life was cut short. In the other ending, Daisy's dad left. The monsters were too much for him, he sealed up the basement, and he was out of there. I consider this to be the more, like, evil ending, I guess, because this means that he left her to die. He left Daisy to get consumed by his monsters, and the last tape that he left was simply his way of trying to clear his conscience before he knew that he ruined his daughter's life for the final time. Neither of these endings are good, obviously, but they are the 2 truths. Another lore-based question is, what was the relationship between Lithop and Daisy? Because a lot of people noticed that it seemed to be familial, kind of maternal, and you know, guys, I'm not just gonna tell you the correct answer, because it's all up to interpretation. It's really, whatever you believe to be true that's what's true. There is no right or wrong answer. Another question is, why did you choose to tell this story in such a weird way? One of the things that really inspired me was magical realism. It's one of my favorite kinds of storytelling. This is a very rudimentary summary of it, but it's essentially where surreal and bizarre and unexplainable and unrealistic things happen in a story, and it's just accepted. It's extending your disbelief to the max and understanding that the things that don't make sense are not grounded in reality, but more so in meaning or in fantasy. I think the reason why I love magical realism so much is because I hate people who watch movies and are like, oh, did you notice this terrible flub where in this scene he puts his coffee cup down with his left hand, but in the next shot it's on his right side? Oh, I hope someone got fired for that blunder. Like, for the love of God, it's just art. Like, make it weird. Not everything has to make sense. And that's my answer for when people are like, there was a weird part in this Daisy Brown video where she says that Alan doesn't defecate. How is that possible? It's not possible! It's not possible! You caught me, Sherlock! I don't have a biology degree. It's because Alan is a metaphor. That's why he doesn't poop. Cuff me, boys. What was the funniest behind the scenes moment? Oh geez. Like, the story itself was so absurd that behind the scenes somehow got even more absurd. And so I have a few funny ones, but mostly they're just fucking weird. First of all, there's the story of how my dorm mates found Alan. I had brought Alan to college with me so I could do filming there. And at one point, one of my roommates walked into my room and was like, hey, what's that under the blanket? Which, obviously, it was Alan under the blanket. They had, like, had friends over. I can't stress this enough. Like, there were people who I had never met before in the living room, and now they were all, like, noticing and paying attention. And so I was just like, do you actually want to know what's under it? And they were like, yeah, show us. And I was just like, all right, go to the living room and wait, and I'll bring it out. And I brought him out, and when I tell you, there was just a chorus of screams. Genuinely, the fact that my roommates didn't just immediately get me committed to like an asylum really shows you the power of friendship. I ended up explaining it to them and they all like were into it and were okay with it, whatever. But just that one moment, like imagine your roommate just walks in with an alien on like a Tuesday night. Wait a second. This was actually how I met Ava. She was one of the people in the living room, so she can vouch for this story. This is how I broke the news to my roommates that I'm an internet sensation. When I was preparing to film the last shot of the final video, I had calculated when sunrise was gonna be, and I like set my alarm for 4 a.m. so I would have time to film the way over there and get over there just in time for sunrise. And so the day comes, I wake up in time, I have the right outfit on, I have Lithop in the duffel bag, I step out into the pitch darkness, and somewhere, I don't know where, there's a jogger jogging and screaming to himself. Like he's screaming motivational things to himself. Like he's running, he's like, y'all sleeping! Y'all sleeping while I'm out here getting stronger. I never sleep. You're never gonna catch. And he just wouldn't stop. He wouldn't stop. I think I actually got some of it in the footage. I was just out here in the darkness with a monster in my duffel bag. Like, sir, it's really great that you're so passionate and motivated in your fitness journey, but I'm trying to film a satisfying yet ambiguous ending to my monster web series. Can you please shut the fuck up? Oh, when we were recording the audio for the dad's tapes, which, by the way, my real life dad gave the voice of Curtis Brown for that. So, psych majors, have fun with that one. When we were recording it, my dad had the, like, pained voice, the pain in his voice, because our cat was biting him while he was recording it, and he couldn't get her to stop. And so it just called method acting, sweaty. Look it up. One last thing, this was just more so, like, something on the internet that I found funny regarding it. Like, towards the end of the series, I was, like, skulking around on Reddit, or the, like, wiki page of Daisy Brown, and I saw people were, like, throwing out the theory that, like, I bet whoever's creating this, like, their neighbors are really concerned about them, and they, like, get the cops called on them because they're walking around, like, covered in blood and screaming all the time. I don't know how to tell you guys this, but no one ever cared. My parents got used to me screaming while recording. They didn't give a fuck. When I was filming the video, I'm outside, like, where I was talking to myself and covered in blood in a field, there was a family, like, a couple meters away playing frisbee. They saw me. They saw me walking around covered in blood. They didn't care. Even when I got up and started, like, running at the end, no one noticed. I'm from the Midwest, and so everyone here is really, like, mind your business type of thing. Just so you know, I never had to deal with people calling the cops on me or worrying about my safety because no one worried about me at all. How's my look, by the way? What are we thinking about it? I was going for like a goth mommy vibe or something. Did it work? If even one person comments that it didn't work, I'm deleting this YouTube channel. I find it real funny that I thought I had pulled off a goth mommy look, except looking back at it now, this is clearly just a shitty Elizabeth Holmes cosplay. Oh, another one is, are you ever going to show us how you made Alan? And the answer is yes, but it's gonna take some time. Back in May, I promised that I was gonna do like a multi-part video series about like, not only how I made Alan, but how you can make your own monster, and I did mean that. But then my life got ruined, and so it had to be postponed. What I'm trying to say is that yes, eventually, I will get around to like explaining how I made all this. It's just gonna take some time. Oh, and if you're wondering why this happened, it's because here's just a little sneak preview of what the How to Make a Monster series is gonna be. Basically, don't use paint and scotch tape, like that like rolled scotch tape, to put together major joints in your puppets when you make them. Because it will crack and break and not work. So I had to decapitate my boy and then stitch like a new neck in. This is all new, baby. It's fleece, it's not going anywhere. He can bend, he can look all around. But basically, this is just a little warning. When I went into making Alan, I had zero formal training on how to make a puppet, and I didn't look up like one tutorial. I just sort of like sussed it out about like, okay, so there's a mouth and there's a head and there's a neck. So I put it all together. He really truly is more of an art project, like a sculpture, than a puppet, but he works as a puppet, like he still moves. I just gotta do repairs on him every now and then. So the answer is yes, I will eventually tell you how I made Alan and how you can make your own monster. It's just gonna take time, and I appreciate your patience. Thank you, my life seriously got ruined. Oh, and if you are going to ask, what about Big Alan? Whatever happened to him? I talked about this in a live stream with Inside of Mind. Basically, I don't know how to describe this or like explain this in a way that makes it sound like I'm not just outright lying. He started decomposing, and he's made out of paper mache, human DNA, paint, glue. But after the final video was shot, he just like started rotting or like melting, kind of. Oh, little story time. The year after I finished Daisy Brown, I went back to college, and when I came home, I couldn't find the Big Alan head, and I had assumed that my mom had like thrown it out. And I was like, you know, I'm all right with that. I'm all right that I didn't like say goodbye to it or anything, because it did end up representing a lot of really dark, painful thoughts in my life, and it's okay that I don't have a big ceremonial ending with it. It's just out of my life now, and that's fine. And then I opened my closet door, and it was on the top shelf of my closet. When I tell you, I thought that this motherfucker had actually grown and that I was about to meet God. And so I put him in a bag and hid him lower in my closet. Every now and then I brush up against him. It's terrifying. I'm not gonna show you guys. I don't want to talk about it anymore. Lastly, I got a lot of questions about fan theories. Do I have any favorites? Are there any that bother me? Whatever. But the question that I've gotten the most over the years is like, what does it mean? Are you ever gonna tell us what the symbolism was, what all of it was about, what all of it meant? And honestly, I don't think so. I don't think that I can ever bring myself to really, answer it. For one reason is because the fan theories have almost figured out everything. Like 99% of what I put out there, the fan theories have already noted, and so I feel like it's kind of redundant. You guys are just way too smart for me anyway. And the other reason is that I don't want to stifle fan theories. I want to see more of them. Like, I feel like if I were to come out right now with like a twit longer or whatever and just explain everything, that would kill some of the fun. That would kill the fun of watching people figuring it out on their own. I feel like that would be like me walking in and being like, oh wow, that's a really interesting in-depth interpretation of my art. Too bad it's wrong though, because this is the correct answer. But to give you an obnoxiously vague answer about what Daisy Brown is truly about, it's a story. It's a story about a story. It's about different perspectives and how they affect our perception of the world, and about how having missing information can change everything. It's about growing up being told something that isn't true, and about finding out the truth about someone or something, and it just shatters your world. It's about being hurt over and over and over and over again and not having the words to express or like even comprehend that pain. It's about suicide. It's about seeking connection in loneliness and finding yourself in loneliness. It's about making peace with yourself and realizing your worth as a person. It's about the discovery that there are people in the world who have been through what you've been through and will love you with your problems and all. It's about accepting and understanding that the world doesn't make sense and that it's okay to not understand everything. It's about the horror of realizing that you're worthy of forgiveness, whether you've committed a crime or not. It's about me. And from the comments that I've gotten over the years talking about the reaction they had to that story, I think it's about a lot of us. Honestly, I'll never be able to put into words what it means to see comments or DMs on like TikTok or something talking about how a story that I made was able to comfort someone, or able to make them realize that abuse wasn't their fault, or just entertain someone. Even after all these years, that I still get messages about how it helped them, and that's just bonkers to me. That's just bizarre that I had an effect on people. Besides getting these heartfelt messages, the other most common message I get is people saying, I don't want to bore you with the whole, ooh, your story really meant a lot to me, you changed my life bullshit. And I just want to say I never get tired of it. I never, ever, ever will get tired of hearing about that, because I just love hearing about your experience with my story, and it's never going to get boring to me. Okay, there. I talked about Daisy Brown. Finally, 4 years later, are you happy? That was really intense. Sorry, I didn't mean to come at you like that. So this is what I've been putting off for the past 4 years, and honestly, it feels good. I'm scared to edit this and upload it, but it feels good to finally like put into words what I've been thinking when people ask me these questions. And also, when you ask questions, now you have a way to answer them. That all being said, thank you so much for watching. Subscribe if you want to, don't if you don't. Bye.